Lead us in an activity.
All right, so we're going to do an activity that involves some interpersonal communication. And while we're doing this, I want you to keep in the back of your mind the ideas about power distance and how that might be represented in interaction between people. So you have, yes, can you distribute these? You have bundles of toothpicks in front of you. There's one for everybody. You have 25 toothpicks there. And Cindy is distributing some slips of paper. Don't look at anyone else's slip of paper. That's just yours, and it's a rule of nonverbal communication. And on that slip, you also have an indication of something that offends you. So we're going to move around, and you're going to have short conversations with each other. Just introduce yourselves, explain how you got here, but be sure that you perform that rule of communication, of nonverbal communication. And if someone does something that offends you, give them a toothpick. And give them a toothpick every time that happens. So you might be just exchanging toothpicks. One other thing to take note of is the dot on the back of your paper. There are different colors, and when you're finding new partners, make sure you don't have the same color dot. So just match up with people with different colors. And we're going to do a short series of conversations, and I will ring this bell when it's time for you to switch.
Go ahead, talk.
All right.
Just pick it up.
All right, here's a toothpick. I'll just keep giving you toothpicks, I guess. So how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So what made you come here today?
I came because I thought the workshop was interesting.
Oh, okay. Where did you hear about the workshop?
It was through my boss.
Through your boss?
It was an email forwarded to me.
So where do you work?
I work at the International.
Find a new partner. Find a new partner, but make sure the dots aren't the same.
I think the people who are in high-powered positions in India, when they come here, they're perfectly comfortable.
If I think about that, I'm thinking the people I know who are Indian here are not the students, but the people who are actually in high-powered positions. So it's maybe not surprising if they're comfortable.
Some who are very comfortable address me as April, no problem, and then some.
All right, please go back to your seats. All right, now we're going to discuss the activity in a debriefing process. It's one of the things involved in a lot of intercultural interactions and things that we're working on with our students that go abroad or international students here is understanding what comes out of your experiences. So it's not just having had them, it's what you do after that, how you think of it, and what the sort of meaning that you make out of that. So to start, how was that? How was that experience?
It was embarrassing. Every time I got a
I'm sorry.
every time I got a toothpick, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what did I just do?"
The interactions felt really forced. There was no natural flow to any of the conversation. I was very self-conscious.
Okay. So what happened?
Well, I'm a communicator by trade, and I never found the flow of any of the conversations that I had. And while I was standing there talking to a gentleman whom I consider to be a friend and a colleague, I found that I was receiving numerous toothpicks and thus offending him. So I became very self-conscious and felt bad and struggled to maintain any sort of decorum within the conversation as a result of that.
So you were doing something that was offending him and you didn't know?
I could not for the life of me figure out what I was doing to offend Steve.
Well, and I think also to piggyback off of that,
we were probably distracted and even more awkward because we were trying to figure out what the other person was doing that was supposed to offend us and vice versa.
Right.
And so that probably didn't help our interactions.
How does this relate to the world? Yes.
What I saw happening was actually the practice of being self-aware of what you were doing, but then you were trying to become aware of what the other person was doing. So you're actually simulating the dealing with cultural differences in this little activity, because it's like you step outside yourself and you're watching what you're doing and you're watching what they're doing, and then you're trying to figure out where there's a dissonance, where there's disharmony in that encounter. So
Right.
it's very much what happens in an intercultural situation.
I agree. The difference is in the real world, people aren't giving you toothpicks, so you don't have a clue of maybe that you are offending them, right? So, yeah,
Would you like to have toothpicks in the real world?
I don't know.
What if something were different about the activity? How could what changes could we make that would?
It would have been a lot more fun if it was chocolate instead of toothpick.
I'll keep that in mind for next time. That might be counterproductive.
I have a suggestion. I think with all of us processing what we were doing and trying to process what the other person was doing, and then also invent conversation, if there had just been a quick conversation starter that had popped up on the screen and everything says, well, it looks like the weather is, and then, those types of things. So those little things to help us use less of our energy thinking about what to say, so that we could really more embody what we were
A
supposed to be doing.
topic to go to, so you can then focus on interactions. Anything else? What if you had more time? Worse?
No.
Yes?
I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and my thing was no eye contact, and of course that's taboo, and I'm very conscious of it when I'm there about being careful not to make eye contact with ladies, and I know that it creates a discomfort. What I just experienced, though, was really hard, because I know that I'm a person who looks people in the eyes, and for me, it's how I build trust, not just people trusting me. It's me trusting them, and if breaking that old thing that if they can't look in the eyes, you can't trust them. That still is here, but I found it interesting, and as I sit here, I know I'll be able to reflect on it even more, because putting myself in that situation, it means that I'm more conscious now that how uncomfortable it would actually make somebody feel if they don't want you to make eye contact, right?
And then what next? What sort of applications does this have?
Yeah, we probably should be really more conscious of how other people are different from our communication styles, and that, for example, the other people offending other people, and really we may not be aware of that. We're just plowing ahead, but maybe after this, I'll really have to be more, again, just more aware, how my behavior is affecting them, and maybe how they're acting, and that maybe I should adjust a little bit to what they're doing also.
What do you think would happen if someone did ask, what am I doing that's offending you? Because I think, as me said, I don't know that that's done very frequently. No one has guts to even ask or bring it up. They'd rather just kind of be quiet and then reflect on their own. So I think it'd be interesting if a situation occurs if someone actually says something about it. But I don't know what would happen then. That would be another what next.
Thank you. Right. So, and then if we go back to that developmental process from the beginning, So how we become more effective in adapting our behavior. First, increasing awareness of ourselves, like we've done in the first two exercises. And here, increasing awareness of how others act. So we talked about differences in power distances, those potential of interactions there. Here, nonverbals. And maybe even managing our emotions. You had to keep up conversations while potentially feeling uncomfortable about the role you had to play or the fact that you were getting so many toothpicks. And one of my thoughts with this exercise is perhaps if there were more time, you could work on figuring out what that was, what was going on, and stop getting toothpicks. So I picked out this activity for power distance because of the importance of nonverbal communication. Albert Mehrabian, a psychologist, has the 7%, 38%, 55% rule, where nonverbal communication is a big part of messages that are conveyed. So how could nonverbal communication indicate power distance? Whether you're in a hierarchy or a more egalitarian situation. Any ideas? I have a few examples, yes?
Well, I would assume if you're dealing with a high power situation, then a subordinate should not be making eye contact with a supervisor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we could actually have a scenario where a supervisor would get very upset if they came from a low power context. They would be upset that the subordinate would not make eye contact with them when they were communicating.
Yeah.
And so you would have this dynamic going on where the subordinate would be doing what they were supposed to do culturally, but the supervisor would be very upset because from their cultural perspective, they weren't doing what they were supposed to do in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, eye contact is one of those. So in some Asian cultures, averting the eyes would be a sign of respect or humility, or the way that a subordinate would interact with a superior. Proximity, so how close you stand to someone in the Indian caste system. There are prescribed distances between castes. Or in the terms of emotions, facial expressions, perhaps your body posture, how relaxed you are. In a high power distance culture, the subordinates may be expected to display less emotion or perhaps only positive emotions, appearing pleased for the superior. The superior may be more able to show negative emotions to that subordinate.